And good afternoon, everyone. I am Laura Goldman, the dietitian with Premier Weight Loss, and this week's discussion is on doing meal prep for busy weeks. And hopefully, we can try and find a way to build a system that will actually work for you and your lifestyle, because I think one of the biggest complaints that we find ourselves in, I myself included, is we understand the idea of meal prep, but how do we actually get around to implementing that when time is of the essence? And before we get to that, it is always important to remember our weekly saying that it is the quality of your calories that matters. So, with that in mind, we are also going to be focusing on helping to build that system around those high quality calories. What we'll be covering is why the meal prep matters, rethinking what that actually means, building a weekly system for you, some ways to help with storage and also reducing food waste, and a couple challenges for the week. First, it's important to remind ourselves why this matters and why it can be important for you to use this. First of all, when the quality of your calories matters, as we say at the very beginning of every single week, meal prep can become a very helpful tool for success. It's been found with research that some structured eating environments, and that includes structured eating uh, meal plans and sort of knowing what you're going to be having ahead of time, can really help improve dietary quality and reduce that decision fatigue that so many of ourselves find ourselves in at the end of the day. We've made many, many decisions throughout the day, and the last thing we want to think about is what to make for dinner. And life is busy. So if you have a meal prep system on hand, it can really help to keep things simple. And the goal is simplicity and health, but not keep me perfect. So this is not about having a perfectly structured meal plan, because life happens. So in our first section here, we will be rethinking what meal prep means. I think when we hear the term meal prep, we do think about those Sunday afternoons or entire Sundays just spent in the kitchen cooking meals, full system meals ready to go. And so it's Monday through Friday, just everything ready. And that can seem very taxing, because even if we're taking the day off, it still is one of those days where maybe we don't want to spend the entire day in the kitchen. So, to find that compromise, there's something called component prepping, and that really involves preparing individual components or building blocks of a meal. And that means you can have them cooked, ready to go, and then you can mix and match. So, we're looking at things that are grains, proteins, veggies, sauces. All of these things are prepared ahead of time. So, you have your grains that are already cooked and ready to go. Same thing with the protein. And so the other thing that can make this helpful is when you are on a GLP-1 medication, smaller portions of these components can be mixed and matched, and the remainder can be kept in your freezer, refrigerator. And this also allows you some flexibility. So if one type of meal doesn't sound good at the time, maybe there's another way to design your components that will work for you. So the new principle for batch cooking is just having this 3 component rule and not these 5 meal rules. And so try and find 3 main components to have on hand at all times. So if you're looking at a protein, have 1 or 2 of them available. So you have some grilled chicken on hand, maybe some hard-boiled eggs on hand, but also have things that didn't require prep on your part. So things like canned tuna or Greek yogurt, or also canned beans, which are a great source of protein. It's a time saver and it's something that's ready to go. Also, make sure that you do have some fiber-rich carbohydrates on hand. Those complex carbs can be very helpful. So quinoa, which also is high in protein, is a wonderful fiber-rich carbohydrate, but also a protein additive there. Some brown rice, roasted sweet potatoes, wild rice, and things such as that. And then finally, those non-starchy vegetables, and you can have them prepared in whatever form works best for you. Myself, I'm a big fan of roasted vegetables, but raw or steamed are also some great options. When it comes to sauces and marinades, find your favorites to have on hand. I'm not expecting people to make homemade sauces or marinades unless you have a good recipe for yourself. And then from there, you can create some of your favorite combinations. So if you have a high protein pasta like the Barilla protein, some marinara, and then you've got those roasted or sauteed veggies ready to go, you can either add those white beans or some of that grilled chicken. Alternatively, if you have your pre-chopped lettuce, some vegetables, quinoa, rotisserie chicken, and you've got a grain bowl, grain salad going on. Also, I think stir fries are an excellent way to essentially clean out the kitchen, and you can add a bunch of components in that way. So now how do we go from these components to building our system? And this is a challenge because this is individual to everyone, but hopefully a couple of these tips will work for you. So first and foremost, grocery shopping, which can be a pain, it's important to find a way to simplify that. So have a template list that can be organized by category. And on the right side of the screen here, I have an example of a portion of this list. I actually do have the full list available, and if that's something that you'd be interested in having, I would be happy to get that to you through the Premier Weight Loss staff. I can make sure they have it on hand. You can also, though, categorize by your favorite recipes. If you already have a weekly recipe in rotation, then just know the components that you would need for that recipe and group it that way. Try to aim and select some fresh produce and meats once to twice a week. And then if you have pantry staples, those beans, the dried goods, that can be probably relegated to once a month so that you don't feel like you're always running out to the grocery store. And then when you are in the store, and then also some time-saving tips once you go home, I do think it's important to mention that frozen vegetables can be just as good, sometimes better than fresh vegetables. And oftentimes you can get them in pre-chopped form. And so I know Kroger has their versions where it's almost, I can't remember the title of it, but it's like a meal starter where they have the components of a mirepoix and it's already chopped for you. And so you can dump those into your soups or stews. You don't have to worry about chopping, and it's also going to be just as nutritious. When it comes to canned proteins, so I know they have canned tuna is very popular, but also beans. That can save you some time so that you don't have to start from the beginning of cooking and again, cutting, chopping. Also, rotisserie chicken is another time-saving as well as money-saving choice if you just want to avoid the hassle of cooking. And remember that the store perimeter is usually where you're going to get most of what you need. Not everything, but most. Then it comes to planning those meals. And so just remember that every night does not have to be perfect. Try and find 3 to 4 main dinners, and then if you can make enough, so an extra serving or half a serving, so that you can have some lunch the next day, and that also will save you some time. And for me personally, rather than trying to design a weekly rotation that's different every single time, sometimes having a theme night. So if it's Taco Tuesdays or Meatless Mondays or something like that, so that you just know every single day is going to be this, that can also take some pressure off because you know what to expect. And I know that not everybody does leftovers, but I do think they can be very handy. I'm a big fan of them myself, and when you can have those leftovers, then that also saves you time on planning additional meals. Just know that your leftovers are probably going to go beyond just one day because if your appetite is reduced, you're going to be having smaller portions. In terms of some tips for what can work, just if you're dealing with any GI side effects that come from using GLP-1 medications, try to avoid high fat and high sugar items since that can worsen those effects. And again, sometimes if you are feeling like those GI side effects are a little bit stronger, I know oftentimes they can be especially stronger the day or two after your shot for that week. Go for softer textures and less dry items. So foods like soups and stews, some slow cooker foods, those tend to go over a little bit better. Moving on, now that we've got some ideas for building a system and knowing how to prep those components, where are we going to put them? And what can we do to avoid any food waste as well? So the first idea is to look for some smart storage solutions. There are more and more of these portion containers that are coming out. Some are called super cubes, which are actually these silicone cubes that put things in individual portions and that can be frozen. But also these clear containers are really great to have because if you can have them at eye level in your fridge, you're going to be able to find it and select it much more quickly. And having it already pre-portioned out again is just going to save you some time. It doesn't always have to be portioned out. This picture example shows a full meal, but maybe you have a container for your meat and maybe you have a container for your roasted vegetables. That's fine too. It's whatever works best for you. And for some timelines with safe storage, I do think it's very important to just make sure we're all practicing food safety. So cooked proteins, cooked vegetables, cooked grains, all of those are good for about 3 to 4 days in the refrigerator. If you are freezing any of your foods, though, thankfully, in terms of food safety, you should be good. More than 6 months, you're then sort of potentially running risks on quality control. So freezer burn is a thing, and so the food might not be as palatable. I do think it is a very good idea to find a way to do food labeling so that you know when you've made it, and then you can know when the 3 to 4 days time frame has passed. We do want to try and stay healthy, and food poisoning is a good way to ruin anybody's day. So I do very much encourage food safety. Also, I wanted to talk about staying flexible during all of this. I do think that 1 to 2 nights with no plan is a good idea. Those are the nights where I mentioned you can make a stir fry, you can clean the fridge out and build grain bowls, and let yourself be a little more flexible with that. I do also think that if it is one of those nights where you've just had it, you can allow yourself a flexible day or two where you're eating a healthy meal from, say, Chipotle, or maybe you are going to just defer to what I put here as rescue kit options. So nothing really sounds good. You don't feel like preparing anything. Go to the yogurt and berries, have some muesli that you know is healthy. If you want some peanut butter with some whole grain toast, that's also a good solution so you're still getting something well-rounded. And just know that not every day is going to be perfect, and that is okay. What we're looking for is just more consistency, 80%, or if you want to think 1% better every day. Every little bit of progress with doing meal prep just makes it easier for the next time. And then I do think it's a good idea to talk about reducing food waste. So try to come up with groups of meals where you know that the ingredients will be shared. So we talk about using chicken on a salad, then put the remainder in a soup. If you like making broths, you can use any vegetable scraps for broth. And if you have some leftover grains or vegetables, I think stir fry is that great example I gave, but also an egg scramble. Most vegetables can taste very good scrambled or put into a frittata with eggs. And if you have some extra produce, if you have some bananas that are starting to get a little more ripe than you would like, then I would suggest freezing them in the freezer. And even some frozen greens can blend into healthy smoothies very easily. So try to put that in there ahead of time, and then you'll have it free to use for smoothies or anything like that. And we're already at the tail end here, so we can talk about some challenges for the week. And there were a couple here that I wanted to leave for your consideration. So the first is helping to build that fridge for yourself. Try to dedicate 20 minutes to 1 hour this week preparing 3 components, and try to use these components to make at least 3 meals. So I have it listed here as 1 lean protein, 1 fiber-rich carbohydrate, and 1 non-starchy vegetable. And you can either chop some romaine, roast some broccoli on a sheet pan. You can cook the quinoa brown rice or have it in those the microwave ready packs so that all you have to do is heat it for 1 minute and you're ready to go. And get prepared with some eggs or some chicken. Have these out and portioned, ready to go. And see how you can make just 3 meals out of it. And see where that takes you. And maybe it will open up some creative ideas. The second challenge here, if you feel like you know how to prepare those meals, is also if the grocery store is really where you get hung up, create that template list. And so before your next run, write out a template. You can open up an Excel sheet or a Word or use an app that you like and just put out that template of the food with categories that work for you. Or, as I showed you in the example earlier in the presentation, you can use that. So try to list out at least 2 or 3 options of proteins you use, 3 to 4 options of those non-starchy vegetables, and they can be either fresh or frozen, some fiber-rich carbohydrates, healthy fats, as well as those pantry staples, something pre-prepped basically and ready to go. And if you get a chance to try either one of these out, I always love to hear feedback from people and see whether or not any of this helped them out. So to put all of this together, just remember that meal prep doesn't need to be complicated. It doesn't need to be time consuming. Stick to the simple components, and hopefully that can allow some flexibility and also sustainability so that you can stick to it long term. And that simple weekly system can really help reduce that stress that can come with meal times. And again, if you find a favorite well-balanced meal, there is no shame in using that frequently. A lot of us, I think, have some default meals that we like to do, and the more of those you can find, I say the better. Also, having that smart storage can really help support you in those busy weeks. I can't tell you the number of times I've been so grateful that I've made something the night before ahead of time and I can just reach in the fridge, grab it, and go, because that just takes that little bit of a chaotic morning off of my plate and I can feel a little bit more prepared and ready for the day. And just remember that protein first is still front and center in all of this. So when you're looking at your meals, when you're looking at preparing something to eat, ask yourself, where am I getting my protein? And that will already start setting you up for success. And with that, I open it up to questions. If you have any questions, there should be a little Q&A, a question button at the bottom of your screen. You can feel free to press that and I'll answer for you. Or if you would rather take it offline, you can certainly reach out to the Premier Weight Loss staff. They can get you in touch with me, and I know many of them also are a font of knowledge and should be able to help answer any questions you may have as well. So I will wait for just a couple of moments. All right, well, with that, I hope you found this helpful, and I look forward to any feedback you may have or find out how those challenges of the week treated you. Have a wonderful rest of the week, and I hope to see you in the next one. Thanks so much.